Good morning and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Curare, your online source for job advice and excellent new job opportunities for physicians and mid-level providers. Today I'm here with Josh Thurston, our director of our locum tenens program, and I'm Jerry Ramusak, the CEO. We're going to talk about kind of a funny topic today in a way, but not so funny because what it is unintentional or maybe less obvious interview killers that come in our business. Between Josh and I, we have about 30 years in physician recruiting, and we've seen a lot of strange things happen on interviews. And today we're going to talk about some of those things that could go wrong on interviews that you might not necessarily prepare for and that might come as a surprise to some people. I'm going to go ahead and get started right away, and one that is completely and totally out of our control that could change the outcome of interviews, and I've seen it happen a ton of times, is simply the weather. Right now it's a sunny February day outside. It's beautiful here in Bloomington, Indiana, but we have gray days, probably 1 in 3 days, and when you come here on a gray day and it's rainy or cold and nobody's outside downtown, nobody's out mingling at the lunchtime hour, everybody's inside hunkered down, it's rainy, you don't go out to the parks, you don't see all the greenery. Compared to a sunny day, when everybody's out mingling and the town's robust and people are doing things, it's a major different lookout for a physician candidate that has never been to the community before. It's their first time here, and they're here on a sunny day versus a cloudy day. It could make a major significant difference on the interview outcome, and I've seen it happen a lot. And that is one, out of all the things that we're going to talk about today, the weather is the one that's completely out of your control. It's kind of a gamble, and you just got to hope for the best. I've been in many situations where I'm looking at weather.com, hoping that the weather where my candidate is going that day is going to be good. And because if it is, most of the time the outcome is going to be a little bit better than if it's not. Next one I'll hand over to Josh for him. He's going to talk about spouse.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the main things with interviews is that it's going to go both ways. It's how does it affect the candidate on the interview, and then what can the client control and can't control, and then the other side is how's it going to affect the client side of it, and the weather affects both client and candidate on those interviews, or should I say employer and candidate. When you're going to an interview, oftentimes you've got your spouse, your kids, significant other who comes along with you, and it's so important for that employer to engage with the family as a whole, not just that future prospective employee. It's very easy to mess that up by simply overlooking them, saying, hi, it's nice to meet you, and then simply forgetting that they're someplace in the hospital, maybe in a waiting room or something like that, while you're there for 3 to 4 hours. So it's so important that they do engage. Something you might even want to, as a potential employee coming into that interview, you may even want to prepare your family for that, your wife, your kids. Be proactive before you go to that visit. Maybe help that interviewer out a little bit and say, this is what my kids like to do, this is what we're into. We really like going to Wonder Lab type facilities or science facilities, or maybe they like being outside. Jumpin' Joey's, for instance, something like that. Sky Zones. Maybe your wife likes Indian food or Thai food. Super great for the employer to know that when they're going into it, and you could really set up kind of a smooth transition for everybody involved. Post-interview, your family's asking you, how did it go? You're telling me it went great, I loved it, and then you're looking at their faces and realizing that the feeling wasn't mutual. Because for them,
they were ignored all day.
They were ignored, they felt less than welcome in that community, because even though it was just the facility, that's a representation of the community as a whole. It's very important that the whole family is treated as the interviewee, actually.
Right, and I think in physician recruiting there's 2 huge rules. One is time kills deals. Deals and offers that drag on usually don't happen. The other is that spouse kills deals, and that's where you have a spouse that isn't well taken care of during the interview or the community tour, and you don't make them happy because they're going to be the ones living in the community, not spending so much time working like the physician will. And those are people that you need to pay attention to, the spouse and children.
Absolutely.
Another one is a poor community tour host per se. Another example, when you come into a community and you do all the interview's going great, everything's going swell, you hand the physician off to a realtor or a community tour expert, and perhaps they're having a bad day. Perhaps they're less than enthusiastic about things, and they don't give a good community tour to your prospect, and the prospect gets turned off simply because of the fact of the person that you chose to give the community tour. So as a client, I strongly recommend that you really prep your realtor or who's ever giving that tour, if you're handing them off to a third party, and let them know about what the stakes are here, because they're dealing with a high-end client at this situation. And I've seen realtors get a little bit too rambunctious with showing like $1 million homes because they think they have a physician that's going to buy them something. Or I've seen them where they're just not enthusiastic enough throughout the tour and don't show the proper parts of the area that the physician might want to see. So I think coaching whoever's going to be doing the community tour on the client side is really important to make sure they cover all the bases that the physician might want to see.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great transition for kind of that next point in that community tour is that providers understand if you're interviewing for a job, when does that interview start? It's important to know that when you step off the plane, you pick up your rental car, or you get in your car and you leave your house and you're on your way to the site visit, that's when the interview begins. That's when you need to be on your A game and really focused on not just what are the questions I want to ask, what am I trying to gain from this interview, what do I want to learn, but also it's important to be open-minded and open to those other personalities you're going to encounter. It just starts right away, and when you're dealing with those community tours and other people, that the interview's still happening. Even though you're with someone who doesn't have any hiring decision for you,
right? That
person was hired by that potential employer. So of course they're going to communicate with each other. You might think that having a casual conversation about the low level of the homes that were being offered, or the high level of the homes, or the poor build quality was nothing more than semantics. But at the end, if that gets back to the employer, which it will,
right? Yep.
Now all of a sudden they've just made a decision on what your personality type is. Maybe they think you're a bit stuck up and you're a little bit too high on the horse for them, and they couldn't accommodate you in their small town,
right.
Or vice versa. Maybe they think that you're just not going to be interested in their community just because it's not the right personality. And you don't want any of that to happen. You want to be on point from the very beginning and make sure you're fully engaged and really, really showing everybody who you can be at your best.
Yeah, I agree. And it's you mentioned right when you get in the car. I think I've heard funny stories about seeing physicians getting to the parking lot of a small town facility, and they sat in their car and chain smoked 3 cigarettes before the interview, then came into the interview reeking of cigarettes, and an initial turnoff right there. That interview didn't go so well, and I think we've all heard stories similar to that, where it's almost like as soon as you step onto their property, you're kind of under the microscope at that point.
Absolutely, somebody's watching because they're looking for you to show up. They want to know what you're driving. They want to see everything. If you show up and let's say you're a surgeon and you show up to an interview and your car is obviously dirty, obviously has rust in it, obviously has a hard time shutting off because the timing's off. They're thinking, wow, this guy's not taking care of his car very well. I wonder how he's going to take care of our patients in surgery. It's pretty important that you pay attention to the small details.
Right,
So,
yeah. Or get a rent-a-car.
Or get a rent-a-car, exactly.
This kind of segues right into the staying on point throughout the whole interview process, and I think an important piece that could lead to a breakdown is the post-interview dinner. And this is where you've already gone through the interview process, you've seen the facilities, you've met the people you're going to be working with throughout the day, you've met the decision makers. You and your family like what you see, you can see yourself working here. And now comes time for going back to your hotel, getting dressed up and going out to a nice dinner with those same people that you probably met earlier in the day, and likely their spouses as well. And this is where you got to keep your guard up really high, and you don't want to let your guard down during a dinner and perhaps maybe have a couple too many drinks or something and start talking too much and maybe saying things that you shouldn't be saying under that sort of environment, because again, during the dinner you're still interviewing, whether you realize it or not, because the colleagues there that you're with, they might be letting their guard down a little bit, but they all know each other. They've been doing this for years. You're the new guy on the block or the new gal on the block, and you really need to be really be careful during those dinners and make sure you don't over imbibe or kind of go off the rails from the fact that you're still interviewing during that time.
Yeah, maybe certain topics to stay away from at that dinner would potentially be like, I wouldn't necessarily bring up politics or religion. I just kind of stay away from those topics and focus on what are the best things that you saw during your interview.
Right.
What are the positives that you can take away from it? Because even if you already know at that point you're not going to accept the job, you know that it's just not the right community or it's not the right size facility for you, it's still your responsibility to represent yourself well and understand that these are people you've made contacts with within a relatively small community, the medical community that is, and tell everybody how much you enjoyed it, and you got to think about the job and just move on. Just stay away from anything controversial if you can help it at all. As far as staying on task, this kind of transitions really well too from the dinners and kind of staying on point during the interview. make sure that when you're at an interview, you're fully engaged in the sense of not just thinking about your family and how are they engaged there, and thinking about what you're doing with answering questions, but it seems like in the last 5 years especially, and just every year it becomes more and more prevalent that we have employees, potential employees, doctors, mid-levels showing up to interviews, and I don't know if they're forgetting it or if they're doing it on purpose, but they're bringing their cell phones and other digital devices with them. They're not turning the volume off. They're checking emails during interviews, which I still can't imagine sitting in an interview with somebody behind a closed door and pulling my phone out and saying, "Excuse me for a moment, I just got an Instagram update. I think that might be my 100th like on this photo." Okay, it really, really blows my mind, but it happens. We hear about it. I've heard everything from toy puppies, little dogs inside of purses, and not from the provider, but from the spouse. You know, I recall this happening, I believe, in Nevada. Someone showed up, how they showed up at an interview all day long, and it wasn't discovered until 6-7 hours in that, oh my gosh, there's a small dog in the spouse's purse. So
sounds like she did a good job of hiding it.
yes, she did, but it turned everyone off very quickly. So, you know, you really need to make sure that you can stay away from that. I say leave your phone in the car. If you're worried about a phone call, you're worried about, you know, maybe you have a wife and she may go into labor at any moment. I would have thought that a little forethought, maybe rescheduling the interview would have been a better option than to bring your phone with you and keep it on the site visit. They're going to understand that kind of stuff. So definitely stay away from you know, checking your phone, things like that. Stay away from nervous habits, tics that you might have. One more quick story. Had a doctor once going for his 3rd interview with the CEO. They flat out told him, "You will get an offer. This is nothing more than a meet and greet. You've got the job." Showed up and literally chewed his fingernails until they bled. Didn't get the offer. It was over. So this is just a matter of staying calm, keeping yourself cool, and moving through and being yourself. Bad things can happen even at the 11th hour. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Those are some great tips. I think all of them a little off the beaten path. Another one that I want to mention before we cut out is attire and hygiene. Dress appropriately for an interview. This is your chance to make a first impression. You can see we're a casual work environment. I think on your first interview as an advanced practitioner or a physician, you should come dressed to the nines and dressed for success and show people that you're serious at that first interview. We've had physicians show up unkept, unclean, and not dressed appropriately to several interviews during the course of our career. And I could say that the outcome on each one of those was not positive. It's one of the biggest interview killers there is, and it's not one of these less obvious ones. It should be obvious, but in case it's not, dress appropriately. And I think that does it for this week. If you have anything else to add?
No, nothing else to add, just other than, you know, use your use your best judgment on those things. And if you ever are wondering about it, contact one of us here at Curare and we'll tell you what to wear.
Excellent. Well, sounds good. We'll see you next week for Coffee with Curare. I'm going to be on spring break, and so we're going to have a couple of guest folks here that don't normally show up. So come on back for the surprise that you'll see, and if you have any questions, send them to us at info@physicianrecruiting.com, and we'll answer your questions next week. Bye-bye.